Hi and welcome to this edition of Newscast. I'm Beth Espy, the head of news here at Manx Radio, and this edition is all about the Chief Minister's statement that he made in the June sitting of Tynwald. He announced that he's going to take a magnifying glass to things like tax thresholds, the cost of sea travel, and also, and crucially, an examination into public sector headcount with a view to streamlining and driving efficiencies. Chief Minister Alfred Cannan spoke to our political correspondent Phil Gawne after the sitting to explain more.
The announcement today was about three commitments that we're bringing forward for a programme of work over the summer and into the autumn that we believe the time is right now to do that. First of all was a commitment to a low tax economy, to work with the Treasury Minister to make sure he's in a good position to deliver a budget that benefits everybody and keeps us aligned as a low tax economy. Secondly, a commitment to look at people, headcount and efficiency across government, to undertake an exercise now with the Chief Executive Officer, chief officers within departments, so an internal exercise around headcount numbers. Part of that will also be around looking at the data that is being produced, the way that data is being reported as well, and that then we will update ourselves on the results of that over the autumn, and I'll come back to Tynwald in November with any outcome from that. And then the third commitment was to engage actively with the board of the steam packet now around steam packet pricing and to understand what further transparency can be brought to that, and as part of that, whether or not we can achieve an objective of making ensure and convincing ourselves that steam packet is working as hard financially as possible for the benefit of our economy and people on the island.
One thing you alluded to in the in your winding up comments to the debate was, who'd be the Chief Minister? Because on the one hand, you try to do certain things, but by the time you've done them, various circumstances may have changed, and this and that. There's a really good example this week of an opportunity that has presented itself for the Department of Education to save a substantial amount of money, but it would appear that has been rejected both by the department and by Council of Ministers.
Well, that's about quality as well. So one has to take the quality of education. We've absolutely dismissed closing our valuable primary schools, which are bringing a huge amount of benefit both in terms of the education that they're delivering, but also to the societies that exist around them as well. So that's been dismissed. There were other parts of that report, however, which are important that we properly respond to and do have value. So, absolutely, we must look at the costs. We must look at in terms of where we are spending our money. We must look at ensuring that items such as the headcount, for example, are kept properly under control. But we've also got to look at the quality of the service as well that is being delivered. Every
year, I would guess, since 2009, following the loss of the substantial amount of VAT money from the revenue sharing arrangement with the UK, government departments have been required to check to make sure that they are delivering services as efficiently as possible. So what has actually changed? I mean, you're suggesting now that the officers in all the departments have to go and do this exercise again, and that miraculously some new efficiencies are going to be found which don't involve cutting services?
So, first of all, what I said and I pointed to was that we have a funding formula in place, particularly around health and social care, which outstrips, everything being equal, everything remaining in this current status quo in terms of our expenditure commitments and taxation commitments, outstrips effectively the ability of the economy effectively to pay for it without change. And that change either means that we seek additional revenues or, of course, we look at government spending. Now, of course, I think the first thing that everybody wants us to do, and it's clearly expressed in no uncertain terms, I think both in Tynwald and outside of Tynwald, and make sure that we are efficient as possible in terms of where we are spending our money within government. We need to undertake that exercise. And we also need to ensure that we are directing and allocating money properly. I make no bones about it, Phil. A lot of this really is because of the cost of healthcare. We've put in place a funding formula. We've just put in sorts of additional sums through additional revenue requirements that have been brought forward, i.e. Department overspending or Manx Care overspending against its budget, and of course by bringing forward initiatives to tackle waiting lists, and I talked about the 3,500 operations that we already have delivered in general surgery, ophthalmology and orthopaedics. But we know there's still a huge amount to do. Nevertheless, if we're going to carry on funding at the levels that have been set out to that funding formula, we're going to have to make a proper assessment to make sure that money that's been distributed around government in other areas is being properly spent and targeted in such a way as having clear benefits for our economy. So there's a piece of work to be done. And I would also say that the last 3 years for the island, for the government, for the economy has been hugely turbulent. Coming out of COVID took us 6 months. Cost of living crisis, some people will argue, is not over, but that was almost a dominant year within government, as has been the industrial tribunal and the uncertainty and the net results that have happened in terms of our change of senior leadership, reforming, putting together operations performance boards, and keeping the public sector working together. And I pay tribute today to the workers across the public sector, because I think and believe actually, when you look back over the last 3 years, as an island, we've come through it incredibly well when you look at the political turmoil that surrounds us. Nevertheless, it's right now to start putting forward the initiatives that we need to make sure that we're in a robust position when it comes to budgets next year. We want a low tax economy. We want people to have as much money back in their pockets as possible. But we've also got to find a way of keeping healthcare costs particularly under control.
Part of your role, of course, is not to scare the horses before the horses perhaps need to be scared, perhaps at some point. But at the moment, you don't know that needs to happen. We know that the public across Europe are disillusioned with politicians. They feel that politicians don't tell them, they don't give the straight answers and the straight talking that's required. In essence, if you're to save money, at some point decisions are going to have to be taken about the number of services supplied or delivered by government.
Yeah, so look, I think last budget the Treasury Minister set out a fiscal plan which, all things being equal, worked, except for, I think, this perennial issue and this nervousness around healthcare funding, and partly to solve the problem at the time, to make sure we stayed on an even keel. We brought forward this increase in income tax. But that's not a position that any of us want to retain. We also want to ensure that the economy broadly is successful, and that means if the domestic economy is going to be successful, people need to have as much of their income kept as possible. And the government rightly takes what it needs to deliver the public services that keep us going as a society, and indeed that the public want. This is not a case of panic. This is a case of a natural evolution, undertaking the right exercises, bringing forward the right initiatives at the right time. And this wasn't just, of course, about efficiency. And we're doing this, by the way, internally. This isn't consultants. It's an internal exercise around the headcount numbers, efficiency of departments. But, of course, we've got these taxation commitments and also this commitment around travel costs and the steam packet. So all three will have knock-on benefits for society if we get them right. But as yet, I haven't seen the results of an efficiency review, and until we understand what those results are showing, then we're not in a position to take anything further at this point.